So we just went over the stomach, right? So how the function works, where all the material goes in, the actual basic anatomical structures. Now let's actually see what's inside the stomach, right? So the first type of cells that I want you to worry about is called the G cells. Okay? The G cells are responsible for the secretion of this hormone called gastrin. So gastrin, so during the cephalic phase, right? So remember how we talked about where you had, the craving for that taco, right? You want to eat the taco. And so your parasympathetic nervous system begins to innervate not only your salivary glands, but also your stomach. So your stomach, specifically your G cells, are activated to secrete gastrin. Gastrin's main function is to activate another type of cell. These cells are called parietal cells. Parietal cells' main function is to secrete two special compounds. First compound that you've heard before is hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid. Another hormone that gets secreted is intrinsic factor. Right? Intrinsic factor's main function is to help with the reabsorption of vitamin B12. So people that experience certain kinds of anemia, specifically pernicious anemia, where there is a lack of vitamin B12, there are cases where, for example, you can have a sufficient level of vitamin B12, but because you don't have this carrier method, this intrinsic factor that allows for the absorption of vitamin B12 to go into your bloodstream and combine and converge into the bone marrow, patients can experience instances of anemia, lack of red blood cell formation, right? So we had hydrochloric acid. So we've seen this. Another type of cell, specifically, we're going to talk about are these chief cells. So we're going to call them chief cells. Chief cells' main function is to secrete this inactive peptidase. So peptidase is what? Peptidase is an enzyme that breaks down proteins, right? So it secretes pepsinogen. So this is a zymogen. So it's an inactive protein that needs to be cleaved. So the way it gets cleaved is via hydrochloric acid. So hydrochloric acid comes in and cleaves pepsinogen into pepsin. Pepsin is a protease, an active protease that can be used to break down proteins into smaller molecules. So what are proteins made of? Amino acids, right? So they break down amide bonds that connect the amino acids together to have these free-floating amino acids, right? And then the third type of cell that I want you to worry about is M cells. These are called M cells. These are called mucosal cells. Mucosal cells' main function is to secrete mucus into the stomach lining, right? So they help for the maintenance of stomach lining, right? So if there was no these mucosal cells, what happens is that the body is prone to this high excessive hydrochloric acid. So if you have a lot of hydrochloric acid in your body and no mucosal cells, what do you think happens? This leads to ulcers forming. So ulcers are these protrusions and these tears in certain digestive tissue due to some kind of trauma, or in this case, abnormality of secretion of certain acids.